Welcome to the June edition of What's in Bloom at the Ruth Bancroft Garden. Each month we put together a selection of plants that are in bloom in that particular month, and we make a sheet of these we hand out to all the visitors who come to the garden. So we're going to walk you through this month's sheet, What's in Bloom, June 2022. One of our iconic plants here at the Ruth Bancroft Garden is Agave franzosinii. It's one of those very large century plant type agaves with bluish leaves that are very sculptural and dramatic, but it differs from the others of that sort in the way that the leaves pull off a little bit of the wax from the adjacent leaves as they separate. And so it leaves these interesting darker patterns on the surface of the leaf, as you can see in the plant behind me, Agave franzosinii. This plant is a Hesperaloe cultivar called Hesperaloe Sandia Glow. It's actually a selection of Hesperaloe parviflora, which generally has a more pinkish red flower. This is an extra vivid color on this Sandia Glow. So Hesperaloes are related to Yuccas. The name Hesperaloe might make you think it's related to an aloe, but that's just because the tubular red flowers are reminiscent of those of an aloe, but its true relationship is with the Yuccas. So like a Yucca, or like many Yuccas, it has curling threads on the leaves, very fibrous leaf, and that's a trait that runs in this whole plant family. But the beautiful tubular red flowers with a flared mouth are really extraordinary. Hesperaloe Sandia Glow. Plants in the genus Yucca range from small tufts of leaves to tall plants with a distinct trunk. And one of the trunk-forming ones is Yucca thompsoniana, which occurs in West Texas and southward into northeast Mexico. So you can see it here in flower now at the Bancroft Garden with the tall spires of creamy flowers that rise above the leaves. Yucca thompsoniana branches and can form a many-headed plant in time. This plant is sort of in middle age and it has a fair number of heads, but it could get a lot more by the time it gets mature. Yucca thompsoniana. This beautiful yucca is Yucca rostrata, and it comes from a little bit of West Texas and southward into the state of Coahuila in Mexico. It's really got a pretty big area of distribution in Mexico, and it's closely related to Yucca thompsoniana, but it differs in being bluer and having less heads on a mature plant than Yucca thompsoniana has. But really an extraordinary plant in bloom with these big plumes of white flowers. Yucca rostrata. Lobelias belong to the family Campanulaceae, and they are really quite variable. From the little trailing lobelias you see commonly in planter boxes to taller plants like this one, Lobelia laxiflora. So this goes from Arizona down through Mexico. I saw a lot of it in Oaxaca when I was there recently. And it's really a wonderful plant because the tubular flowers are red on the tube part, and then where they flare at the mouth, there's yellows and oranges. So it makes a really nice color effect. Lobelia laxiflora. Puyas belong to the bromeliad family, Bromeliaceae, and their distribution generally follows the Andes, from Colombia in the north down to Chile and Argentina in the south. And this is one of the southern ones. This is from Chile, and it's called Puya coerulea variety monteroana. And the individual heads aren't that big, but the crowded multiplicity of heads gives it a sort of a grassy feel. Then the inflorescences come up and you get these wonderful pink stalks with dark purple-black flowers. A beautiful plant when seen up close because the flowers are such a stunning color of dark purple. The flowers are very narrow and tubular and adapted to feeding by hummingbirds, which get the nectar out of the flower tube. Puya coerulea variety monteroana. Dudleyas are plants in the stonecrop family, Crassulaceae, and they come from western North America. So the farthest north they occur is in southern Oregon, and then they extend down through California and Baja California. And a number of species have large chalky white rosettes. And one of these is Dudleya anthonyi. It's less commonly encountered than its relatives Dudleya brittonii and Dudleya pulverulenta. Brittonii coming from right near Tijuana, and pulverulenta coming from Southern California. This one, Dudleya anthonyi, is a little bit farther south in Baja California, and it has those same chalky white rosettes, but with a difference in the flowers. The flowers are on a tall stalk, and the whole stalk is chalky, and then the individual flowers are red and white striped. Quite a wonderful effect. Dudleya anthonyi. Agaves were once in their own family, Agavaceae, but recently they've been treated as a subfamily, Agavoideae, within the larger asparagus family. They occur southward as far as northern South America and the Caribbean islands, and northward as far as the southwestern United States, but the majority of them come from Mexico. And that's true of this one here. This is Agave chiapensis, named after the state of Chiapas in southern Mexico. It's in the group called the polycephalae, and these start out as a single rosette like this one until they flower. After they flower, new rosettes come out from between the leaves and they form a clump. So that's what this one will do after this flowering event taking place now. The flowers themselves are pale yellow in their face and facing outward, but they're kind of hidden by all the purple stamens and stigmas that come out from the flower itself. Agave chiapensis. Brodiaea is a prominent genus of bulbs that occur widely in California, and this is the largest of them. This is Brodiaea californica. Its flowers have a white center and then purple petals, and they can be a couple of feet tall, like you see here. These plants have been moved around a lot in terms of their family classification. They were once in the Amaryllis family, and then moved into the family Temidaceae, which is a much smaller family, or some people prefer to consolidate those into the asparagus family. But however they're classified, they are wonderful bulbs that occur widely in California. This one here occurs in the northern part of the Central Valley and in the Coast Range north of the Bay Area. Brodiaea californica. Eriogonum is a large genus in the Polygonaceae, and the genus is at its most diverse in California, where they occur all the way from the High Sierra to the seashore. This one here is Eriogonum grande variety rubescens, and the flower color is in the red to pink range. The flowers themselves are quite tiny, but arranged in clusters on stalks atop the plant. The leaves themselves have a wonderful texture, slightly fuzzy and with indented veins, and that is a point of attraction even when the plants are not in flower. Eriogonum grande variety rubescens. Agaves, or century plants, are at their most diverse in Mexico, where they range from quite small plants, less than a foot high, all the way up to towering giants when they come into bloom with their enormous flower stalks. Some of them are single, in other words, don't make any offsets at all, and other ones make pups like crazy and become a big clump in time. And this one here is Agave ovatifolia, one of the resolutely solitary ones. So that means when it blooms and it dies after it blooms, then that's the end and you got to remove it. So that's kind of a challenge to fill that hole after it's gone, but it's a dramatic event when it does come into bloom, as this one is doing now. This species, although it's a very showy sculptural plant, has not been in cultivation for very long. It was only described since 2000. And that's because it occurs on a remote mountain range where you wouldn't happen upon it. But it's a great plant in cultivation and a dramatic plant when it comes into flower. And this year we have actually about 8 of them coming into flower at the garden. So all planted at the same time, now reaching maturity and sending up their flower stalks. So the buds are slightly red tinged at the bud stage, but the open flowers are yellow. Agave ovatifolia. Albuca is a large genus of bulbs with many, many species in South Africa, ranging from quite tiny to pretty large. And this is on the large side. This one is Albuca nelsoni. And like other albucas, the 6 tepals, or petals if you will, have a green marking on the outside of the petal, and as the outer 3 spread, the inner 3, which are less green marked, stay close together and touching each other. So that variation between the outer spreading petals and the inner tightly clenched ones is characteristic of Albuca. This one's really gigantic for an Albuca. Here it is about 4 feet or more tall. And because it's a large clump, there's lots and lots of flower heads coming out. Just beginning now, Albuca nelsoni. At this spot in the Ruth Bancroft garden, we used to have a very large Puya. Puyas are big plants in the bromeliad family. And it was called Puya berteroniana. But it got so large it was spilling out and eating the path, and we had to remove it. But we've replaced it with its own relative, Puya alpestris. So this is a much more diminutive plant, but it has the same appealing feature that Puya berteroniana had, with these amazing blue-green flowers. So this is a small group in the genus Puya that have floral branches that extend out past the flowers. You can see the naked tips on the branches there, and those serve as bird perches. So the bird can perch on that naked tip and get at the flower to access its nectar and its pollen. And that is a feature that very few Puyas have. But the extraordinary blue-green flowers is really what makes people stop in their tracks when they see this plant. But it's also nice that the leaves, which is true of a lot of Puyas actually, are green on the upper side and silver on the underside. So there's a strong contrast between the 2 sides of the leaf. Puya alpestris. Abutilons belong to the hibiscus family, and many of them like a lot of moisture. But one of the ones that's really dry growing is this one, Abutilon palmeri. And it comes from the desert southwest in California, Arizona, and southward into Mexico. And it's got leaves that are slightly felted, and they kind of glisten when they catch the sun at the right angle, and little notches along the edge of the leaf, and these beautiful golden yellow flowers, which on close inspection do look like a little hibiscus flower. Abutilon palmeri. Rucelia is a genus in the family Plantagenaceae, and this one is Rucelia equisetiformis. In other words, having the form of an equisetum, or a horsetail. And because the stems and the very narrow leaves look like a horsetail, that's the reason why it got its name, but the flower gives it away. It's nothing to do with a horsetail. The flowers are quite narrow, tubular, and bright scarlet, and really an attractive firecracker kind of a flower. This plant grows in Mexico, but it does quite well for us here at the Ruth Bancroft garden. Rucelia equisetiformis. Dichias belong to the bromeliad family, Bromeliaceae, and they all come from east of the Andes in South America. So at the northern end in southern Brazil, and then on southward from there into Uruguay, Paraguay, and Argentina. So this one is a hybrid made by Bill Baker, who is a prominent grower of bromeliads in Southern California. And it's really an amazing plant. The leaves are quite silvery, but with a little bit of purple in them too. And the flower stalks have a reddish stalk, and then bright red sepals and orange petals. So that red and orange effect is quite strong. And you can see it's making lots and lots of flower stalks in bloom right now at the Ruth Bancroft garden. Dichia hybrid from Bill Baker. Nolinas have the common name bear grass. And many of them from the eastern United States do look like a grass with no trunk at all. But some of the ones from the western United States and from Mexico do form a considerable trunk in time, and that's the case with this one, Nolina nelsoni, which comes from northeastern Mexico. So it's really notable amongst the Nolinas for how blue its leaves are, and its extraordinary inflorescence, which you can see emerging from the top of the plant. So the inflorescence is a slightly greenish shade of yellowish white. and really like a big plume coming out of the top of the plant. So Nolina nelsoni hasn't been in cultivation for all that long, so big specimens are hard to come by, but ours has really attained a good size in the years we've had it here in the garden, and this year it's really making an extraordinary flowering display. Nolina nelsoni. With the cactus family, as with much of botany, it can be very difficult to say how many species there are, because it depends on how you define a species. There are people who would like to draw the lines very narrowly and have a lot of species, and people who would like to draw the lines more broadly and have a fewer number of species. But in any case, the genus in the whole cactus family with the largest geographical occurrence is Opuntia, the prickly pears, and they occur from Canada in the north all the way to Argentina in the south, much bigger than the distribution of any other genus. And one of the plants from central Mexico is this one, Opuntia leucotricha. Leucotricha means white hair, and it refers to the way that the old spines remain on the trunk and look like white hairs. And we can show you a close-up to illustrate that. It has slightly greenish shade of yellow flowers in the springtime, and then pale yellow fruits in the fall. And actually the fruits are edible as well. So really a prolific plant with lots and lots of flowers on it, and then lots and lots of fruits that follow. It can get to be a small tree in time, although this one's more a shrubby growth habit. Opuntia leucotricha. Opuntia is a big genus of cacti, and they range from small, almost ground-covery ones, only inches high, to large tree-like ones. And this is one that's in the middle with a more shrubby habit. And this is Opuntia gomii Old Mexico. It differs from other Opuntias in that the pads have scalloped edges instead of more rounded edge like they usually do. And the spines are quite inconspicuous, but each one of these little nodes here has teeny tiny spines in it. The flowers are greenish yellow, as you can see here, and then they are followed by colorful fruits in the fall. Opuntia gomii Old Mexico comes from northeastern Mexico, and it does occur also along the coast of South Texas, but I don't know whether it's actually native there or simply introduced. In any case, it does very well in cultivation, and the scallop pads give it a unique outline. Opuntia gomii Old Mexico. We don't have very many plants at the Ruth Bancroft Garden that belong to the Gesneriad family. That's the family to which the African violets belong, and gloxinias. A lot of plants in the family are quite tropical, but this is one we can grow. This is Sinningia Shelby. It's a cultivar named Shelby, with these beautiful pink tubular flowers with white petal tips at the bottom and a little bit of yellowish color at the bud stage. So it has an underground tuber, like potatoes under the ground, and dies back to that in the wintertime. And then in the summertime, out come the shoots and these wonderful spires of pink tubular flowers. The leaves are thick and fuzzy, and in that respect, it does resemble an African violet, but in most respects, it does not. And you wouldn't expect it's the same family, but that is what it belongs to, the Gesneriad family. Sinningia Shelby. This plant is Agave mitis, a prominent agave at the Ruth Bancroft Garden. We have a number of clumps of it around the garden, and it belongs to a group called the Polycephalae. And this is a group that ultimately multiplies and makes many heads and becomes a large clump, as this has done. And by the time a clump attains a size like this, with this many heads, then you're sure to have some come into bloom in any given year. So it's always a wonderful display for us in the late spring or early summer. And so here are the purpley red tinged buds, and then the open flowers, which have a pale yellow background color, but with a wash of purple on them. They're really quite wonderful seen up close. And because the stalks are short enough, you can easily see them up close. Agave mitis. That brings us to the close of our June What's in Bloom at the Ruth Bancroft Garden. But remember, there are many, many plants at the garden that don't make it onto the list for various reasons. Maybe their flowering span is too short, or there simply wasn't room enough for everything on the list. Like this, for example, Aloe monticola, a rare aloe from Ethiopia with beautiful yellow flowers. But if you come to the garden, you can see everything for yourself. And at different seasons, different things are going on, so there's a lot to see at all times of the year. And if you check out our website, we've got all kinds of information on the website, such as the filmed what's in blooms from previous months, and our plant highlights, and our announcements of workshops and seminars and classes and so forth. A lot going on here at the Ruth Bancroft Garden.